founder and managing director of the Tracing Group. We specialise in finding people, uniting assets, improving and maintaining data for pension schemes, administrators and financial institutions. I'm here today to discuss the profound impact that high quality data can have on your pension scheme, and also to introduce a brand new service called Size of the Prize. I'm thrilled to have Sara Leacroft, Head of Pensions Operations at Smith's Group. Sara's a valued client whose needs have inspired this innovative new service. Isn't it great to have such a positive client relationship that they're prepared to travel and speak? Thank you, Sara. So together we are going to explore the transformative power of data in the pensions industry. How exciting is that? So, next slide. What do we mean by will I be swimming with sharks or dolphins? Well, rather than just jumping in and spending considerable time and money, which is a pension scheme you know is easy to do, consider this. Just like swimming with sharks requires caution, entering data projects without understanding the scheme or the likely reward at the end can be risky. It's critical to understand the landscape. The risks and opportunities need to be considered to maximise the return on investment and to guarantee the desired outcome. Many schemes are run from a purely regulatory compliance perspective. They're not being managed from a buy-out, buy-in, optimised point of view. So determining your strategy is essential. So, how deep are we going? This question refers to the level of commitment and investment required. Diving deep into the world of data can offer significant rewards, or buried treasure if we're going to stick with this kind of nautical theme that we've got going on. But it's crucial to understand the availability of resources, time and financial commitment involved. In practice, this could mean the difference between utilising forensic tracing or not. It is the difference between ensuring no stone is left unturned. So absolutely every single member death is known about now. So that's why it's important to create a dive plan, a clear strategy and a defined project. Just as a diver needs a plan to navigate the depths safely, we need a detailed strategy and project plan for our data projects so they can run efficiently and not tie up valuable and limited resources. So this involves collaboration. Who's involved? Does everyone in the project know what they're responsible for? Understanding the objectives. Are these all clear? We've got to map out the steps. We've got to anticipate the challenges. What happens when we find that a member has died several years ago? How are we going to handle these cases? And we also need contingency plans in place too. So let's just take a step back for a minute and look at some pension scheme trends from 2015 to 2024. I'm going to draw on the pensions age information some information that we've collected at the Tracing Group as well, and the L&G Large Defined Benefit Pension Scheme Survey, which they did in 2015 and again in 2024. Now at the Tracing Group, we've seen a significant shift towards inquiries for buy-in, buy-out preparation work. This seems consistent with market trends, where there's been a change in focus from deficit size to the security of members' benefits. Could I have a show of hands if this resonates with you and your scheme? Have you seen this shift? Yeah? The lady here? Yeah? At the back. In the L&G survey, they state that 53% of respondents plan to implement a buy-in or a buyout, with 38% of those aiming for full buyout and 11 buy-in as part of their de-risking strategy. This contrasts with 2015, when only 11% of the surveyed schemes were targeting a full buyout. So there's a huge change, huge shift. Furthermore, all scheme surveys that cited buyout as their long-term objective are aiming to complete a transaction within the next 3 years. As we will hear from Sara later, this underlines the importance of pension schemes engaging early with advisors and insurers to achieve their objectives within their preferred timeframes. We know from client relationships that limited administration capacity often can act as a hurdle as well, both in terms of time and financial investment when it comes to collaboration with advisors. At the Tracing Group, we understand these constraints and how useful it can be to know exactly what you are getting into. So this is one of the other reasons why we've developed our new size of the prize service. In simple terms, this offering is designed to help you navigate the path. Our goal is to utilise our extensive experience and knowledge of working on these data projects so that we can provide a clear assessment of what can be gained from undertaking a comprehensive project like this. We'll also plan out a practical plan for execution as well, and that can be done either by your team or ours at the Tracing Group. So, the importance of quality data. The quality of your data is paramount. It is critical for insurers so that they can assess risk and set pricing. Let's explore how this impacts the insurance process and the importance of presenting clean and accurate data through an example. If a scheme is preparing for buyout and the scheme's data contains member records where the status of that member is unknown, the insurer needs to assume a worst-case scenario. So rooting out all the possible anomalies within the data will help the scheme to communicate with its members, to tell them that the buyout is happening. It will minimise fraud risk as well. Inevitably, there will be some pension and payment debts that are identified as part of this process. I mean, in our experience, we've had instances where we've identified these deaths that go back as far as 1996 in some cases. The final thing is that it will establish the status of the deferred member population. This includes finding out which deferred members have sadly died before taking their retirement, as well as updating all the member records so that you can start out from a secure footing. So if you take a member that has moved address and changed their surname and not communicated these changes to the scheme, these are two very common scenarios faced by most schemes. If this member has died, it is at risk of not being picked up in the mortality screening, which relies on accurate data. It is usually only from some sort of forensic work that this type of death for this member would be, with these sorts of data discrepancies, will be identified. You've also got a scenario where your member moves to Spain, lucky person that he might be, and they died sadly overseas as well. Again, that death is unlikely to be picked up on a routine mortality screening, and so would need deep diving work to be found. This brings us neatly to Sara Leacroft, who, along with her schemes, is a living, breathing, perfect case study, which is why we've kidnapped her and brought her here today. So Sara, over to you.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm pleased to talk through our experience and hope this may be some help to others who could be on a similar journey to ours. I'm going to start at the end. What were we trying to achieve? Our objective was cleaner data. Did we achieve it? Yes. And better than that, we also saved money by reducing our liabilities by 50 million across both our schemes. Our project commenced in 2019 as part of a wider path to buyout project. We worked with the tracing group to discuss our objectives. The great thing about working with the tracing group was they didn't just put our data into a black box and hand us back a fancy spreadsheet. We actually had someone there that we could talk through. We were able to understand that the data had that human element applied to it in terms of the results that came out of it. And the collaborative approach allowed us to prioritise and determine our next steps. Our schemes have roughly 20,000 members in each, and both the complex having gone through multiple mergers over the years, which brings further data challenges. At the start of the project, we had over 6,000 missing addresses on each scheme. As a result of the work we undertook, the number of missing addresses has consequently been reduced to under 1,000. The tracing group also helped us identify a significant number of deaths. The experience data in our valuation showed that this was in the order of 10 million liability on one scheme and between 30 and 40 million liability on the other scheme. This was a hugely material factor, potentially significant enough to tip the scales in being able to secure a final buy-in on one of the schemes. Working with the tracing group helped us ensure we were only paying for insurance where it was needed. So what did we learn through this project? I don't know about you, but when I look for a holiday destination, the first thing I'm thinking about is, what do I want to get out of it? And it's no different here. Up front, you've really got to think about what your objectives are. Having this focus will help drive your decision making. Also, make sure you're considering your objectives in the context of your scheme's endgame. The decisions you may need to end up making may be different depending on whether you're going to buy out or looking to run on the scheme. For example, because we were looking to go to buy out, we've taken a proactive decision to dive deeper on death tracing now, because we'll be crystallising the costs of these liabilities in the short term. So what does this actually mean in practice? When we initiated the project with the tracing group, they firstly conducted a thorough assessment of our data to identify members who appeared to be alive, residing at the recorded address and whose details were complete and accurate. These members were set aside for routine mortality screening. This process allowed us to focus our efforts on records falling into one of three categories. Gonaways, indicating that the member has moved, as suggested by some form of indicator on their records. Secondly, deceased or potentially deceased. These required verifications of the death and potentially establishing contact with relatives. Thirdly, a set of records where the members were neither flagged as deceased nor gone away, but seemed no longer to be listed at their address. At every stage, we focused our objective on buyout. We were determined to leave no stone unturned and delved deeper into each of these categories. Our method ensured that members' deaths were identified not only through mortality screening, which is contingent on accurate data and the death having happened in the UK, but also through meticulous tracing of those categorised as gone away and the third group. The latter appeared normal, as they have no gone away or deceased indicator, yet in some instances, these individuals had moved abroad and passed away. Through this extensive approach, the tracing group discovered member deaths in fewer than 19 countries, including Zimbabwe, the USA, and Australia. We've come to realise that identifying a member's death before proceeding with a buy-in results in upfront substantial liability reduction for the scheme, justifying the time-consuming and in-depth investigation and highlighting the value of deep diving. Looking now at the importance of planning. Top tip, start as soon as possible. Anyone who's worked on a data project will know things usually take longer than you think. My advice is also to think about planning the process from the beginning to the end. For example, if a death is identified, how are you going to deal with it? It is likely to be an old death with no known relatives. So we asked the tracing group to carry out a relatives trace for any deaths they identified. This meant that the administrator was given a clear plan of action they could follow straight away, leading to a smoother process to deal with the death case. If you're short of time and resource, consider prioritising. In our case, we knew that our deferreds were the forgotten population, as historically these had either only been looked at as part of the valuation process, or indeed not at all. So that was a priority area for us. As part of the planning process, think about who is going to do what. We used a third party because we knew our administrators were stretched already. With this in mind, we needed to make sure the third party didn't make the administrator's life harder, as that wasn't our intention. We wanted a collaborative approach with good communication and clarity on what was being done by each party to achieve the scheme's objectives. Independence also has its advantages. In our case, it gave us an additional layer of oversight, picking up that while deaths had previously been identified earlier in the exercise, they hadn't been actioned yet by the administrators, which could of course have been costly if not rectified. Finally though, it should be no surprise to anyone that things don't always go to plan. So you need to be flexible, and in some cases there's more than one way to do things. For example, given the data constraints we had in some cases, we had to adapt our plan and ended up supplementing the work the tracing group were doing with the use of the DWP's letter forwarding service. I'll stress again that data cleansing projects are tough. Having spent the effort, we didn't want to waste it. Therefore, we worked through strategies for maintaining the data that we worked so hard to cleanse. We introduced a business-as-usual process to make sure we didn't lose contact with the deferred members we traced. We wrote out a letter saying, "Now we've found you, we don't want to lose you," and encouraged members to register on our member website and let us know about future address changes. So in summary, think about your objectives up front, plan from start to finish, and remember, it doesn't end until you reach your destination, whatever that might be for you. For us, it's buyout, which we're much closer to now, having taken the positive steps to cleanse the data while saving millions of our liability costs. Hopefully it's been helpful to hear my story. Danielle, I'll hand back to you to wrap up.
Thank you so much, Sara. So, as we conclude our voyage, I wanted to share with you that working with Sara and her team amongst our many clients has not only been great fun, but has given our team great insight into the likely outcomes of these data projects. It is from this that we've formalised our approach into a product that we are calling the size of the prize. This represents the first discrete stage. This uses our experience, it requires minimal input from schemes. In essence, we analyse the scheme's metadata and provide a brief report detailing our assessment of the potential saving or size of the prize. This includes an estimate of the implementation costs as well, so that you can do a cost-benefit analysis, and a project plan. The process begins with an initial half-hour virtual meeting to discuss the necessary information. Once you provide that information, we will arrange a follow-up meeting where we'll present our findings, walk through the report, which we'll issue, and then that allows you to consider and proceed either internally or with our help. This is a new service. We're seeking volunteers to work with us and provide feedback so we can refine this into a slick and valuable collaborative process. So anyone that signs up for this today will receive this completely free of charge. So I'd like to introduce my team who are with me. So we've got Suzanne, I think we've got Dean and Justin and Sam as well. Sam's at the back. We've got a stand outside, we've got chocolates and magnifying glasses and all that as well. So do come and say hello, not just about this, but anything. But yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you to Sara, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you both for a very interesting case study and what you've been doing, and also the challenges you're facing. What I'm sensing is sort of objectives. As we close the session, do we have any questions from the floor? Anyone have any questions? Way down the front here. Maybe wrong. If you say who you are, who you work with, before you ask your question, I'd appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Annie DeBoy and I'm a trustee of PwC's Defined Benefit Legacy Funds. And I'm just interested to know, so the deaths that you found, they were all deferred? Or do you find some, because if you're paying them, their bank account would close and you would know that they had died,
Yes.
Is that really correct?
It's sometimes the case where we do find pensions and payments that are deceased as well, and when we analyse data, I mean they're not quite as, we don't find those as regularly as we do the deferred members, but occasionally that does happen as well.
I don't know, because I was just trying to work out if you weren't moving to endgame, then maybe that would, you wouldn't care so much about the 50 million because you would eventually get it back anyway. That's supposed to clarify. Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, give Chelsea Robinson ask some questions. You've done all the work so far, and you've bought in so far, but what's the ongoing processes? How do you manage it now? What particular stages or projects do you have in place to maintain the quality of the data?
So from our perspective at Smiths, now we've so one of our schemes is fully bought in, and so now the process of maintaining the data is doing regular mortality screening, so that covers not just our pensioners that, historically 6-7 years ago that would have just been the focus, but now that expands to cover the deferred population as well, and we're routinely doing that, and we encourage people to register, as I said, for the member websites to make sure that we capture their email addresses and stuff, because I don't know about you, but I haven't changed my email address in like a long time since I set it up in my range, but a long time since I haven't set it up. So I think that's the important way that we can manage and maintain that data going forward. And actually, your insurers will expect you to be doing that as part of your buy-in contracts in the preparation of potentially moving to buy-out in the future.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, I suppose the other area is to keep on top of any ongoing tracing requirements, because the deferred members still move, and if they haven't registered on the website and they still don't always tell the scheme, do they, that they've moved. So it's just, usually that population, once you've dealt with the big, the rump initially, that population that requires that extra work is much smaller, but it still needs that little bit of attention every year.
Any more questions? If you can go to
Michael Scott, a small union pension scheme. How does the tracing service identify that there is a real human being, a real member, at the end of the email address or at the postal address that's been recovered through the tracing process?
Yeah, so there's a verification process that we undertake, which can extend to a biometric liveness detection requirement as well. So that is a service that's offered, so that's often utilised when there's overseas members. So that will require the member to present their ID documentation, a selfie, and to a mapped against one another, and there is a liveness detection that forms part of that, which is a really robust approach compared to perhaps what has been used traditionally with certificate of existence, where somebody's just expected to sign. So yeah, there's lots of options to offer that belt and braces approach if needed.
Thank you.
We have a question at the back.
Penny Koga from Street Trustees. I was interested, I think Sarah said there was still, 1,000 members that you didn't trace?
Yes.
And I was wondering, what level of people at the end of these exercises you might expect part of their pension, their retirement, but I suspect there's still some that might just be going to the ether, and you know, how many is reasonable, I suppose, is 1,000 reasonable?
From our perspective, obviously, we are trying to remove, remove as many missing addresses as we possibly can. So we are still, even though we've got 1,000 outstanding, we haven't given up, we're still working on them. But we are very data constrained in some respects. We have a very small section from, I think it's the 60s, where they get like a £10 lump sum that's paid to you, and the data that we have simply isn't sufficient. We've got Mr. M. Jones and the date of birth, and that's it, and it's just not sufficient for us to get there. So we're doing like things like deeper diving. Are there any back files that we haven't been through to try and find additional information, like a national insurance number or something related to that member? So I think in answer to your question, I guess if ultimately you can afford to buy out if that's your objective, then that's great, but the insurers require you to do stuff still in terms of like trying to track these people, but you're never going to find everyone.
I think typically if you're embarking on a real detailed tracing project, it is possible to achieve levels of success as high as sort of 95%, but there is a level, as Sara's pointed out, which is dependent upon the data that is held. And Mr. M. Jones, with nothing else. It's not just the difficulty with tracing a Mr. M. Jones with not a lot else. It's knowing that you found the right Mr. M. Jones as well once you have, and being able to verify that that is the right person, coming back to the other gentleman's point. So.
Any more questions from the team? I'll come to you, the theme, if I may. Then, I mean, you talked about buying so far. You've done a lot of work.
Yep.
The insurers will want to do their own work. How do you integrate what you've done with the insurer? How do you make it credible? That's the right term. What are the features of the work you've done before buying that give that reassurance to the insurer that it's thorough enough? So I've seen insurers really wanting to dive every time, and even though you've done work, it's duplication. So how do you avoid that duplication?
Well, we haven't seen duplication and challenge from any of our insurers to date. I think we've talked them through the processes that we've gone through, and whether it's just the insurer that we've chosen versus the ones you've experienced, but essentially that has obviously given them the comfort that they need, that the process that we have gone through is robust, and obviously they can see from the data that, you know, they've not got a massive amount of missing addresses, you know, they've not got postcodes missing because the postcode data is up to date where it can be. So I guess we've just tried to give them the comfort and talk them through the process we've been, and we haven't seen the challenges come back to us.
Is that really good? Because obviously buying out is the next step. Buying level,
So
lower.
one of our schemes is going through the buy-in to buy-out process, and we still haven't seen that challenge on that scheme.
Because that's because possibly tracing service will have been involved independently providing it. Any more questions? About running out of time, because we're still have to go home. I guess this is a broader question, the ones that you've been sort of touching on, and I touched on it earlier, but GMP. Data is about people tracing, but there's also quality of data and quality of the calculation. Is there any work you've been doing in that space as well, from a pension management point of view? How have you done with GMP equalisation?
So not from an address tracing?
Not just an address tracing, but wider. So I think it's, I mean, one part is the data core, the next part is quality.
Yeah.
Any insights into the process?
So obviously, as most schemes have been, we're doing like our GMP reconciliations, which has moved to rectification. Again, we have used an independent company to do that alongside our administrator, and I think that's helped because that's provided challenge back to the administration data which is held, which, you know, maybe you wouldn't have got if you haven't got a third party involved in that process. So that's something that we have seen. I would say, a bit like our address and mortality screening project, we have seen challenges in terms of the data. We're having to do a lot of going through the back files to see what missing information, because it's not all there on the electronic records. But obviously we do recognise that we have to take a bit of a pragmatic approach, because we can't look at every single of our 20,000 members per scheme back files, because we never get it finished.
Going back to data, you are where you are with the quality of the data, the searches you've got. What new innovation are you seeing in this area to help you improve that testing?
So I suppose there's innovation around identity checking and which is a really big move forward in terms of fraud prevention and offering schemes that option to really know exactly that they are dealing with the member and not hopefully just somebody that shares the same name. So that's a real innovative area. I think the other area is making sure that once you found the member, it's engaging with them in a style that is going to take them forward, which is engaging online and making sure that in time there isn't really this need to have to do all of this kind of really hard tracing. We want people to be online and engaged and to deal with them that way. So I think that's really where the direction of travel.
I think we've run over time. The last question, builders. It will be it for conclusion. And I say thank you both for an enlightening sharing of views and thoughts and successes. Well done.
Thank you.